Okay, looks like we're live on YouTube. Am I all right to start letting attendees in?
Yes.
Great. Okay, we'll get this started.
Okay, welcome everyone. I'm going to read an image description for our slides before we get started with our event tonight. On this first slide, our image description is a deep magenta and green teal flyer with a photograph of Lexi and a photograph of Luna on the right side of the flyer with the event name, date and time, registration link. Words that read PSU Women's Resource Center presents Creating Feminist Futures Conversation Series, Trans Feminism, with guests Lexi Adsit and Luna Merbruja, ASL and English live captioning provided. Thursday, February 18th, 4:30 to 6 p.m. PST via Zoom. Register now. at the bit.ly link. The event will get started soon. We'll move to the next slide. On this slide, our image description is a group of folks wearing a variety of clothes and hairstyles with arms around each other's shoulders as viewed from behind. Green background and Black images and lettering. Words convey the following message. The Trans Women's Community Project is returning for winter term. Join the virtual gathering space every Friday from 1 to 2 p.m. PST via Zoom. Trans Women's Community Gatherings center the lived experience of trans women and trans femme students at PSU. Come share your experiences, build community, and celebrate trans bodies and history through activities, storytelling, and dialogue. Go to bit.ly/WRC community to register and get the Zoom link. And we'll go to the next slide. And on this slide, the image description is a bird's eye view of silhouettes of folks gathered around a table with food. Yellow background, Black images, and lettering. Words convey the messages within the caption. The Feminist of Color Community Project, formerly Feminist of Color Collective, is returning for winter term. Join the virtual gathering space every Wednesday from 3 to 4:30 p.m. PST via Zoom. Gather with other PSU students this fall and winter in a space that centers a lived experience of feminists of color through storytelling, dialogue, and community. Go to bit.ly/WRC community to register and get the Zoom link. And we will start our event. So we'll close the slides. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. My name is Corey Lira, and I am the Assistant Director of the Women's Resource Center, and I will be your MC tonight. Thank you all for joining us for our fourth event in our Women's Resource Center's Creating Feminist Futures conversation series. We're so glad you're here. It's been a bit of a wild week with the snow and outages here in Portland in this area, so we really appreciate everyone for taking the time to join us. And we know there's folks who couldn't be here but would have liked to have been. Before I share more about our event and introduce our speakers tonight, I would like to acknowledge the land we are on for those of us who are local to PSU, and I encourage you to look up the land that you are on if you are not in our region. Portland State University is located in the heart of downtown Portland in Multnomah County. We honor the indigenous people whose ancestral lands we occupy, the Multnomah, Cathlamet, Clackamas, bands of the Chinook, Tualatin, Kalapuya, Molalla, and many other tribes who have made their homes along the Columbia River. We thank the descendants of these tribes for being the original stewards and protectors of these lands since time immemorial. We also acknowledge that Portland, Oregon has the 9th largest urban Native American population in the US, with over 380 federally recognized tribes represented in the urban Portland metropolitan area. We also acknowledge the systemic policies of genocide, relocation, and assimilation that still impact many Indigenous Native American families today. It is important to always remember that colonialism is a current ongoing process, not only a historical artifact. We are honored by the collective work of many Native nations, leaders, and families who are and have always demonstrated resilience, resistance, revitalization, healing, and creativity. We are honored to be guests upon these lands. We also shoulder a responsibility to make sure our university meaningfully includes Indigenous students and supports making education relevant to their lives. To look up whose land you stand on, go to the website native-land.ca/. To see an interactive timeline of major historical events in the United States from an Indigenous perspective, go to the link nativephilanthropy.candid.org/timeline. This timeline includes historical traumatic events, settler colonial policies, and Native resistance movements. I would also like to take a few moments here to introduce our WRC leader who will be sharing more about our Trans Women Community Project and ways to get involved. Eugenie, it's all you.
Hi, The Trans Women's Community Project Coordinator works to implement programming that increases resources, community, and retention for trans women on campus through intentional collaboration with other resource centers on campus and community partners in Portland. The goal of this work is to build a more trans and genderqueer welcoming campus. In addition to planning events and doing campus and community outreach, the Trans Women's Community Project hosts the Trans Women's Community Group, a weekly gathering that is created to hold space for people who live at the intersection of transness and womanhood.
Thanks, Eugenie. And I definitely encourage folks to check out our Trans Women Community Project and share that information with others, because we know how important it is to connect our community with community spaces such as this. So here at the Women's Resource Center, we work to uplift and center feminist leadership and feminist futures that work to dismantle systems of oppression, colonization, anti-Blackness, systems of oppression, and other harms that keep us from our collective liberation. Our theme for our work this year is We Are Each Other's Future: Resistance, Resilience, and Interdependence. Our Creating Feminist Futures conversation series was created in part as an opportunity to decenter the dominant culture norms of centering academic voices and who is seen as an expert, thought leader, or source of knowledge and learning, and also to decenter the academic panel talk type event as one of the best ways to engage with the topic. With this series, we've been thrilled to bring to campus Black, Indigenous, and people of color artists, dancers, community organizers, writers, musicians, comedians, and cultural workers. Creating feminist futures as a concept is rooted in our desire to actively work to envision the future we both want and need, and hear from those whose lived experience as feminists can help us shape our visions for the future. Our hope is that conversations like tonight will support us all in being part of the collective work to make our feminist future dreams a reality. Transfeminism and transliberation is one lens for us to think about creating feminist futures. Lexi and Luna are two amazing leaders within art and activism and communities that go well beyond, I'm sure, what they'll even be able to talk about tonight, because they've done such important work. And I'm excited to hear about their respective thoughts on what transfeminism means to each of them. I do want to note again that this conversation is unmoderated, meaning our speakers have been invited to share whatever they like to on this topic without a moderator directing the conversation with questions. And it's really important to us that this is true. Additionally, our speakers noted that references to violence may come up, and so we just wanted to share that ahead of time. With that, let me introduce our two amazing speakers for tonight's conversation. Lexi Adsit is a fierce, fat, and femme trans Latina from the San Francisco Bay Area. She has spent the past decade focused on bringing attention to the violence that trans women of color face and organizing that happens in response to it. She is currently creating a forthcoming anthology titled Paradise in the Margins: Lessons and Dreams from Trans Women of Color, co-edited by Nava Mao, Lavelle Ridley, Raquel Willis, and Enrique Zhang. You can correct me if I've said any of those wrong. She has previously produced Brouhaha as a stand-up comedy training program and show with Peacock Rebellion, an East Oakland-based trans femme of color-led arts organization. She has also co-organized the International Trans Women of Color Network Gathering, as well as the Queer Mind conference at San Francisco State University. You can learn more about her or reach her on social media at Sister Mama Queen or her website, lexiadsit.com. Luna Merbruja is an artist and writer currently residing in Greater Seattle area. They are the author of Heal Your Love and have been published in Nerve Endings, the New Trans Erotic, the Resilient Anthology, and the second edition of Colonize This. Luna has worked with various nonprofits since 2008, primarily focused on racial and gender justice. They are most passionate about art as a form of liberation and centering trans people in reproductive justice. You can follow them on social media at Luna Merbruja. Our speakers will be in conversation for most of our time together, followed by a short Q&A. If you have questions for our speakers, please use the Q&A function of Zoom. If you don't have a question, you can upvote a question you'd like our speakers to answer. And with that, I just want to share how excited we are to have you with us and to turn it over to Lexi and Luna.
Hello. Lexi, are you there?
I am here. Are you there?
Oh my God, hi. It's so good to see you.
Hi. Oh, I'm having... Oh, maybe not. Okay. I don't know if my video is working. I might have to jump off and jump back on at some point.
Yes. I can hear you. I can definitely hear you.
Okay, great.
So, yes. Oh my God. Wow. Okay, let's just take a moment. Sound off in the comments how much you love Lexi's hair. I think she's killing it tonight.
Oh,
That pink looks really, really good on you, just have to say.
thank you.
So we're going to be talking, but I thought it would be really cool to, we're talking about trans feminism tonight. And this is a question I had asked you a few days ago, which was like, when was the first time you were exposed to trans identity or a trans person?
Yeah. So, it feels like forever ago now, but the first time, I mean, so we were both involved with GSA Network, which stood for Gay Straight Alliance Network, which is a nonprofit in the San Francisco Bay Area. And we used to do workshops. I think both of us did workshops at local high schools in the San Francisco, giving, there were a number of different topics, but I do remember one of them being around gender and sexuality. And I think shortly thereafter, I was also involved with a youth program at the ACLU. And there was a trans person on staff there who was really important for in terms of seeing that like trans people weren't anything to like be afraid of, like had fulfilling lives, weren't, we're still like complex human beings, just like everybody else. And then that person introduced me to Miss Major, who is a Stonewall veteran, like larger than life personality. And anybody who's ever met Miss Major or heard her speak, she'll just kind of blow your mind wide open. Yeah.
Excellent. I'll share my first time seeing a trans person. I feel like there was like maybe two stages to it. There was so baby gays, like, let's see, I was 15 with other 15-year-old queer youth. And I remember we all went to the Castro in San Francisco. It was like our first time going. We went to that like notorious shop that has all of the biscuits and desserts in the shape of genitals, and we bought a few of those. And then we went to this other store that was kind of just like a everything gay store. Like they had all the rainbow flags. They had all of these postcards, books. They had a whole back room full of like, pornographic DVDs and such. And I remember I came across this postcard that had this person that had breasts and a penis. And it was something that I had never seen before. I was a teenager. I didn't really see many naked bodies, but it was a type of naked body I'd never seen before. And just something struck a chord in me. Like I did not understand it. I didn't have like any adverse reaction to it. It was a very like, what is that kind of feeling? And shortly after that, I remember going to some kind of like gender and sexuality workshop, and the person who was leading it was like this brown person who was genderqueer. I believe that's how they use that particular word. And they were describing to me like the gender binary and what it was. And again, like as a teenager, it kind of just felt like my world was expanding in such a fun, incredible way. Just like, I don't know, just learning from other trans people and like having this first image of transness, like be in like this photograph, which was, again, like I'm not trying to like super analyze it, but it was just a moment where it's like I got to have my own personal process with transness, I guess, in the beginning. And it felt very just natural, you know, like I didn't come out immediately as trans, but definitely something struck a chord and it led me to more questions. And I think that was something that, yeah, led me here today over 10 years later, having been trans for like almost a decade. So yes, that was my introduction to transness. But so Lex, I know that when we were like, I was in high school, you were, I think, going to your first year of college. We started getting radicalized about like colonization and about racism. And I'm curious, like where your activism like started. Like, what were your first activist projects, and then what changed over the years? Oh, okay. Lex may be out for a second. She thinks she might be working on some video stuff. Okay, I guess I'll answer my own question. My first activist projects were about educational justice. I learned about how zoning laws in my county made like basically all the East Side schools have less funding, whereas other wealthier neighborhoods had more funding. Oh, sorry, that was my dog. So so started with educational justice, expanded to racial justice, learning about racism or learning about like queerphobia, transphobia. And then in my early like 20s, I started focusing a lot more on like gender and racial justice and like the intersections of the two. Before it was really separated, right? Like if you're dealing with racism, you're just dealing with racism. You didn't look at it from a multi-pronged lens. But yeah, once I got into like my 20s, I started seeing things like womanism, seeing feminist of color, seeing, just all these different sort of like branches of feminism that really were talking about intersectional issues. So yeah, I've been involved with a lot of nonprofits dealing with, different aspects of this, but I've always come back to art. That's sort of been like the fun, imaginative place that like my activism really flourished. So I did a lot of art around sexuality, being a trans person with a sexuality, wanting to talk more about like trans people, like not just them being objects of desire by other folks, but like actually having their own sexuality and their own desires. So yeah, that was, back in 2014 was a radical idea that instead of worrying about people choosing us, what's the process of us choosing others? Lexi, are you here?
I am. I'm back.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that. My
No worries.
computer has a eternal struggle with Zoom, and I don't really know why, but
I think they go way back. They probably had a really messy breakup and
divorce. Yeah, kids were separated. The whole shebang. I heard you were talking about school. Was that what you were talking about?
The question I asked was, how did your activism change? So like, beginning at GSA Network and those nonprofits over the years, how has your activism changed?
Wow. Not a big question at all. I think something so for me, my navigation of the world was like constantly complicated because I was trans, I was a woman, I am also an adoptee who was raised in a all-white household. And so my understanding of race was a very hands-on learning process. The college, I mean, a lot of things that, and I feel like this is a really common experience for especially like queer and trans people who go through undergrad, is that you get really fired up and you get really radicalized. And a lot of that is so important, but it also causes you to kind of attack the people who are also giving you that support and information. Um, so yeah, so I mean, I remember one time that you and I were very we were advocating um for trans women of color to be represented in the arts in the local Bay Area because we weren't seeing people like us perform. And
Just to the audience, we just wrote a lot of messy Facebook call out posts. That is what Lexi's referring to right now.
yeah, that's the easiest way of putting it. And I think it's important. I think everybody has a contribution, right? Like, and it's easy to critique and it's harder to like build stuff. And we have built many things over the years now, and we can definitely agree. I think that I at least for myself, I would say that like building shit is hard and exhausting. And so yeah, I think you kind of, at least for me, I had a moment where I was like, oh, that's right. Like there's a whole world out there, and there's like social issues that are just beyond like trying to get more trans women of color on stage and paid by local arts organizations. And so now I'm working with, and I mean, before this anthology that I'm working on, we had organized an international trans women of color network gathering, which was the first of its kind, maybe the first ever since, that's really been an international gathering driven by trans women of color. Whereas, like, I think the only way a lot of girls from other countries meet each other is through like WPATH or other large institutional and international like conferences and organizations. But yeah, I'm really excited about the anthology. I'm working with this incredible group of co-editors who are just spread out nationally. Two of them are PhD candidates at their respective universities. And then Nava Mao is, if y'all aren't familiar with her, she is a filmmaker, director. She has a short film called Waking Hour, which is just gorgeous and beautiful and about trans Latina's struggle with finding intimacy and also safety. And she's going to be appearing on HBO Max's upcoming series Generation. And then Raquel Willis, who is arguably one of the most published trans women writers in the world. um, so it's really, really great. We've got a couple of submissions already. Um, and yeah, I guess just to provide a little bit of context, that for me, what my approach to social justice and feminism and other social change movements is really being rooted in improving people's everyday lives. And I was thinking about this earlier, really about ensuring the right to life, because I think under capitalism that isn't guaranteed. And I don't know if we really talk about that as much as we should. So yeah, that's me. And I know you're working on some projects, Miss Luna.
Yes. Yeah, I think, like Lexi mentioned, like when we were young and our organizing work was about inclusion and understanding, like educating people what the word transgender meant. This is like, early 2010s. And now it's like, I don't know, it's just moved into a different place that I feel is just a lot more powerful. Like instead of trying to like drag cis people behind and be like, be our allies, be nice to us, we're like, okay, so how do we interact with each other and make something lasting, make something for us, like, by us and for us. So, similarly, I've done a lot of writing. I've worked for Beauty Publishing, which was an all TWOC because it was me and my best friend, publishing house. And we were publishing books by trans women of color who were not getting published elsewhere. And I mean, like, this is before AK Press and Arsenal Pulp Press, like, were really publishing the girls, like, when nobody was doing it. And it was very, like, it wasn't a corporate effort. It was really just my best friend doing all of the tech stuff and me doing more of the, like, communications end of it. And we published, like, five trans writers of color. And it may not seem like a huge thing nowadays because it's like trans writers of colors are published everywhere. But at that time, we really were doing something new and different. It hadn't been done before, specifically by and for us, right? And after that, there's been a few other trans sort of publishing places like Topside Press and Heartspark Press. And I was co-exec at Heartspark Press for about a year, and I had been with them since their inception. But there is still sort of this problem, even in 2021, where trans writers are still not getting published. And when we really look at, I've done my research. I have a whole curriculum based on this. When we look at what trans people are being published, we see like these major publishers like Simon and Schuster, Penguin Books. They are publishing predominantly trans folks who are assigned female at birth. The only like trans woman, trans femme that I could find that was published by a big publisher was Janet Mock. And like literally the only one. I've done a bunch of research, looked at all of the cutie pop, authors lists, and that's exactly what I found. Was at the major publishing level, that's what it was. When we go down to like, smaller presses and everything, it's much more diverse, but I think there's still this sort of like creative, like glass ceiling in a way, like we can't hit past that, right? We had Janet Mock do that, and then I haven't heard of another trans person, anyone of any gender, like hitting that same mark that Janet did. And she did that back in 2014, 2015. It's been like 6 years since then, and it's not to discredit that, them. It's just to say that we have been creating talented literature, talented art. This applies to anyone, if it's musicians, if it's in the nonprofits, right? Like there's this sort of like, in all of the fields that I've like delved in creatively or with nonprofits, there's sort of like this limit, and you hit it and you just like, whether it's lack of funds, whether it's lack of people support, it's really hard to organize your people when you can't get past that, like just like a barrier almost. So all this to say, like, I've done a lot of activist work, but I think what's most impactful is like the relationship work I've done. So my chosen family are like my feminist praxis, like all the things I learned about abolition, all the things I learned about racism, sexism, like instead of like teaching workshops about it, I now live it, embed it in my life, so that I'm being better to the people around me and we have a more sustainable relationship with each other. So one way I want to talk about that relationship is with Lexi. Lexi, Yeah, we've done so many activist things over the 10 years that we've known each other. I guess I would love to talk, like I would love us to talk to each other about what is it meant to have this sort of relationship with each other, this like sisterhood, best friendship. You can spill the tea, just go
Oh,
there.
girl. I mean, and well, okay, so I'm gonna say something, and I don't know if I've ever told you this before. But when we kind of met, and the more we understood the parts of ourselves that were very similar in each other, I found it easier to love you than love myself, just because of the way that like society had, ingrained so many messages, right? Like that it's not okay to be fat, it's not okay to be brown, women are sex objects, like trans women are or sex toys, like it's just, it's the and it sucks that like so much of our lives are intertwined with that everyday violence that we experience, because if I wasn't traumatized in the ways that I had been, I don't know if I would be working on this anthology or, the person that I am. Um, and so I think that our relationship was a safe space for me to practice and even lay the groundwork for healing my relationship to my body, because I could love and appreciate you. And that it feels so hard and complicated, right? Like to have to admit that, but it was so beautiful too for like us to go through that together, from like the end of high school through college, through like finding ourselves and countless male, other gender femme dates and messy relationships, to yeah, to just, I mean, some of the stuff that we can't say in public now because we did it together. But like that praxis of, I think, ensuring each other's survival, and for me, like being able to heal my own relationship by loving you.
Oh my God.
I know. I'm not trying to cry with a full face of makeup on. So
uh, that is so sweet. Like I like, can we have 5 minutes, please? Can we take a break? Just kidding. um, Thank you. I've never heard you articulate it like that. You've said similar things, like, oh, we helped each other come out, understand our gender, those sorts of things, but never that it helped you to love yourself. And I think our relationship, and like, because we met at such a messy age and went through so many messy years together, um, I think one thing that you've really like just captivated and like kept me all these years, really showed me just like the amount of love and compassion you can have for someone else. It's like, I didn't have that growing up, from pretty much anybody. And I experienced it in my adulthood, and most of the times it was very short, like short-lived best friends, short-lived relationships. And you were like that person that was always there, like from the beginning to the end, from, you know, any random dreams we had, from cosmetology school to becoming therapists. We've had so many different dreams over the years. And yeah, I think something that the thing that I love about you that brings me back to you is that like like, you're my ride or die, you know, like you're the person that I've like, you know, when I think about building a future and having a family, and like you're in it, right? Like you're gonna be there for that. And I never had that before, right? Like I never had that faith. I never had that sort of hope for those sorts of things. And like you helped me dream about the future to like think about not just next year, but the next 5 years, 10 years, you and I, your Capricorn plans. Like, but yeah, I am so thankful. Like, we've done so many incredible things together, but the best thing about us is that like we have each other, you know, and I've not felt that with anyone else I've organized with, you know, like I've done it with a bunch of people, but like we genuinely have that connection that's like, hey, we can change the world and do all the badass shit that we do. And also like play video games for hours and have sleepovers and celebrate birthdays together. And I think the lie that we get taught as activists is like, you know, the movement's going to take care of you, but it really doesn't, you know, like the larger movement does not go in and help someone in the middle of a mental health crisis or help them, you know, be a reference for a job for them to get. And you've been like the movement to me, right? Like you've helped me with all these things over so many years. And yeah, I think like you're part of the reason why I'm a feminist, like giving me this language and these behaviors, but also, yeah, you've just taught me so much more about larger things too, about, you know, being lovable as trans people. So yeah, that being said, we talked about the past, the organizing work we've done. I want to hear about your visions for the future, for yourself and just for trans people in general.
Yeah. I mean I can start with myself just because it's the easier starting point, but I am a founder of a company which is for profit, and it it feels very like complicated to be an anti-capitalist and be like, oh yeah, I'm starting a for-profit company, and so like I hope that you all will purchase my products. But it puts it gosh, it means something else to be a trans woman and a trans woman of color and own something that like you're building for yourself. And I and also that I'm hoping to build for like others, right? Like the I hope that like we primarily employ trans women of color and can give them like a living wage. And you know, so if anybody has a spare $1 million in the audience and wants to invest them, just let me know. But yeah, I think it's my hope, I think, for trans people is to be completely, I mean, it's like I wish part of it was to be able to have like just a regular existence, like an average existence where you're not like traumatized, you can have healthy relationships with people, you can have a job, you can, you know, be housed and not have to worry about like clean food or water. And I also hope that like we don't get exploited. And I think, you know, there's always a lot of complicated things that happen when trans people enter the group chat in a way. You know what I mean? Like watching the Disclosure documentary, it was very apparent that like the treatment of trans people was not great. Um and so yeah, it's like I feel like it's a very low bar. And then there's the like, oh, grander visions for like our society as a whole in our world, and making sure that, like, we stop climate global warming, because people in Texas shouldn't be freezing to death, or anywhere, you know? But yeah, how about you?
I have a follow-up question, but I'll I'll say my visions for the future are very family-based. I want a baby. I want several babies. I want babies of all ages. I just want babies. And I've done a lot of preparation work for that. Like I've been watching interviews of people, of queer and trans people having children. And it's really hard because there really is nothing out there for trans women trying to have families. That is something I'm really contending with, is like all the trans family resources are for people who have uteruses who can get pregnant, and little to nothing for us. So instead of being salty about it, I'm trying to figure out like what would be a productive way to still get to that endpoint. And part of me like has the vision of doing the whole policy work and like reframing pregnancy, reframing family creation. And the other part of me is like, I just want to have my baby, and like it's already enough to just do that as it is. I don't need to like change the whole national policy around it as well. Because typically that, anyway, the point is that having a family to me is important, because ever since I was a teenager, I have no idea, this is before I even got radicalized, I had this idea that like passing on like my love and care to another human being who is my child is my purpose. And I've had that purpose since, for what, let's see, 11, 12 years now, that idea that I'm supposed to be a parent, and it's never wavered. It's never like, there are times I've struggled with it because I could easily conceive, but it was never like I never wanted to be a parent, right? And I feel lucky and blessed that I have that purpose, because I know other people don't and they search for it. But for me, it's really that simple, just how to have a baby. So it's exciting to me. I don't know if anyone else loves babies, please let me know, because it's really, it's great to like want to have kids and like love them, right? But I don't really meet a lot of other people who are like so ecstatic about children the way that I am. But yeah, that's my future. My future is having a bunch of children who don't, like Lexi's saying, right? Like who have a home and who have food and the things they need, who have a healthy childhood, like not rife with trauma and, and sorts of things. Like that would break a lot of generational baggage that we've all collectively have in our current lifetime. My follow-up question for you was, you're talking about art, art making. I know you're coming out with the anthology. If you just had someone give you $1 million today, what would be that project that you would do? Like, what would be the big, whatever it is you want to do?
Yeah. It's funny because I low-key know the like 5 people that I would probably hire for like 2 years. But I think, and this is something that I am hoping to do once the anthology gets released and we're touring, is to film a documentary interviewing trans women of color across the United States. And I think that's there's going to be like a wealth of information, as there is a wealth in all of our lives. Um, but yeah, I want to share our stories in a way that like I want to say hasn't been done before. And there are like some films that like come close to that like most often are centered around just one person. Um, and I also think it's a story of like how we're building this anthology for ourselves and how what we've learned from our time on the space rock hurtling through space and um the dreams we have and all the things. So I think that is feeling like the next big thing, which is it's so scary. I'm not gonna lie. It's scary to have these like abstract thoughts and then like talk to people about them and they're like, oh my god, that sounds great. Let's do it. I'm like, what do you mean let's do it? It's so much work. But yes, my Capricorn ass continues to organize shit on the side. So um yeah, that's my answer.
I don't know where we are on time, but I do have one thing I want to address, both of us to address. Hi, we're in a pandemic. I could have never foreseen anything like this happening. I don't think any of us really could. But we've been in it for almost a full year now, at least in the States. Yeah. We're coming up on the anniversary soon. So, I think one of my favorite questions I ask just old friends, other people I'm meeting is about, what are some hobbies or some things that you've picked up during pandemic? And it doesn't have to be like, oh, I do exercise every day. It could be like, no, I've stress ate 17 17 egg rolls in a row. It's not yeah, just let me know. How has it been during the pandemic and where have you arrived now?
Yeah. I think it's I feel very adapted. And there are definitely times where I'm like, oh, I just want to go outside and like go on a shitty date or like check into a shitty motel and just there's this one scene in Queen's Gambit for those that watched it where she checks in to a shitty hotel in some country and it's like a real basic hotel, but it's like just her. She throws her suitcase on the bed and she like closes the door and then just plops down. And I'm like, bitch, I miss that. I miss checking into a shitty motel or like hotel or whatever.
I love how you know that scene. Like you walked us through.
It was just it was like a
Yes.
switch. I was like, oh yeah, I want that. Like I miss that feeling. I remember exactly what that feels like. Um so yeah, what have I done to get through it? I've cooked a lot, like a lot. Um I mean, I've cooked for you before, so you kind of know
It's
a
bomb.
number. Yeah,
It's
yeah.
bomb.
I love to cook for people. I did like all our holiday feasts as we usually do at my house. Um and then I also got a slow cooker for Christmas and a stand mixer. So I've
Damn,
been
upgrading.
I know, so I've been making bread, which has been really fun, and doing just more like cooking. So that's been really great because honestly, there are times where I like if I wasn't cooking for myself and my dad, I don't know what we would be eating. Like it would just be nonstop, not good food, like hot dogs or something. So
Mm-hmm.
but it's also really fun to like bake and just do different stuff. But yeah, how about you?
Yes. I'm so jealous I can't be there to have all this good food you be cooking every day. Let's see. There's a few different hobbies or trends I had, I guess, during COVID. Last year, when I was living in near San Francisco, me and my partner pretty much had this practice of every day going to the sunset, like just driving by, just going for a car ride and driving by the sunset. And it was really nice, very relaxing. A plus would recommend. And yeah, I feel fortunate that like last year, you know, I was a full-time substitute teacher. The pandemic hit, I got unemployment, you know, and I was okay. I was like financially okay through most of the pandemic. And that gave me all the time to like do nothing. And I had to really get comfortable with like not being productive. And I think for many of us, it kind of like attacked the capitalists in our own heads that made us feel like we needed to be working and producing and all the things. But yeah, once I kind of got into my routine of just being relaxed every day, not, you know, the pressure. I mean, it's you know, it's twofold, right? Like I wasn't working a job where I was at the front lines, so like I could be home and not have to go interact with people. I totally recognize that, and like, and yeah, that also being said is like once I got used to being inside, it was just used to it, you know. Like I was seeing there have been several people around me who've been diagnosed, not diagnosed, sorry, who tested positive for COVID-19, and it was varying levels of difficult, right? But it sort of was just like, okay, this is not a mythical thing. People around me are getting it. Like, there's some pretty serious repercussions for it and consequences. So yeah, staying indoors. Like at this point, at the pandemic, it's almost like, why would you go outside? It's like dangerous out there. Why, you know, like you're like it's like a complete different feeling, I guess, than last year where I was just like, what's going on? I don't know. I don't, you know, the panic has kind of like left, and now it's sort of like you said, like, well, we're here. Like, what are we gonna do? So yeah. So some of the other fun things, I guess, of pandemic is just. I have this like weekly musical night. So me and my friends gather virtually. We watch a musical. We dish about it afterwards. I started taking up like an impromptu art class with some of my friends. And in a way, it's actually brought me closer together to my friends, like seeing them every single week because we check in with each other, make sure we're okay, and like do something fun. So we're not just like dreading the pandemic every day. Uh, So yeah, that's sort of how I've been getting through it. Definitely not alone. Yeah, and definitely through like lots of game time.
Yeah, agreed.
I I ran out of questions. I'm sorry.
Okay, great. No, that's fine. You asked a lot of great questions. So, oh, does that mean I have to ask questions?
I'm not sure. There's a Q&A. Maybe there's questions
You
in
know,
there.
let's dive into some of the Q&A. Kelly asked, I'm so excited to be here. I work with trans and gender diverse youth ages 4 to 17. I feel like this type of work is not really out there for our trans spectrum kiddos. Do you both do work with trans kids at all? How can we do more in terms of supporting and providing services for the young ones? I feel like you're better to answer this.
There it is. Hold on 1 second.
Not to say that I don't do anything for the trans kids. I usually I don't even have an answer.
It's okay, boo. I got you. Hi, Kelly. So this is a book I helped produce. It's called 99% Chance of Magic. It is a chapbook geared towards like maybe later elementary school, middle school. There are like illustrations for every chapter, so it's fully illustrated too. And yeah, so the whole goal of this book is all trans writers and authors, illustrators worked on this book and put it together. If you contact Heartspark Press, they typically ship free books to trans kids. So just contact them; they'll send you a book. But other than that, I've I've only seen trans like activism, or sorry, like not activism, but like trans organizing with the young folks through, I think it's like Gender Justice here in like Washington. There might be like a similar organization in Oregon. I just don't know Oregon that well. And I think it's Gender Justice or Gender Odyssey conference that deals a lot with trans youth as well. I'll put these names down here so you can have them as a reference too. But yeah, the hard thing about, if I'm not mistaken, the hard thing about organizing with trans youth is that there's still a lot of policies in place where the parents have to know or like have a certain level of consent, you know, like so consent to see a therapist, consent to see a counselor about gender, like dysphoria or identity issues. So I know those are like big, like, you know, some kind of big struggles, but I also know that there's lots of parents who are like fighting that actively. Let's see, anything else? I really only know the laws for Washington, so I don't know if that'll be super useful for you, but I know in Washington, legally, if a trans youth tells the teacher or their peers their name or preferred pronouns, legally you have to respect that. So the staff, the admin, anyone at the school cannot deny that youth their like identity, essentially. It's like written in the law. I would assume Oregon might have something similar, but just letting you know like that's has been passed, and it might be a good looking in point to like help advocate for trans youth. Yay, okay.
Oh, good.
Yes.
Yeah, and I mean, I stream on Twitch. I don't think like if they're under 13, they might not be interested.
Mhm.
But I feel like it's 13 and above because there's a lot of teens on Twitch. And I like to think I'm like the cool millennial, unlike these other millennials who don't understand the youth of today, because I'm just so I'm just talking shit. Yeah. But yeah,
Yes.
we can move on to the next question. I'm just shamelessly self-promoting. It's here, I'll put it in the thing,
Mhm.
in the chat, in the thing.
So then, so this is from Jay. What are the dream collaborative projects y'all have in mind for the future? Let's see.
Well, I think
Yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
for context, we had a list of things that we aspired to create.
Oh my god, yeah.
Yeah, so there were a number of things on that list. The International Trans Women of Color Network Gathering, by UD Publishing,
Mhm.
and I think an anthology was on the list too.
Definitely on the list.
I think we wanted a feature film that wasn't like, it was just like a trans woman of color is the main character, and that's like it had nothing to do with her being trans.
Yes.
And I
I remember
believe,
one.
oh yeah.
There was this, it's, okay. Cabaret, not Cabaret, it was Chicago. Chicago's Cell Block Tango with an all trans cast.
Yeah.
Really what we
Oh,
wanted
I
to
remember
make come
that.
true.
You know what? I would use $1 million on that.
Yes, please.
Just on that alone.
Yes, please. The vocalists, oh my god, just
I
trans.
know.
Oh.
Can you imagine like MJ Rodriguez?
Yes.
And
Yes, I can imagine.
yeah, there's a bunch of others that I think I would bring. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, MJ, Davia, I want, oh my god, Brianna
Star.
Sinclair,
Yeah.
Star.
Oh my god.
Okay. Oh, I'm so hyped. This is such a good question. Thank you.
I know. Oh my goodness.
Alrighty, and then let's see. What are some of the trans artists that bring you joy?
Yeah, so we just named a few of them. So Davia Spain, Star or Amar Basu, Brianna Sinclair. I think that's how you spell her last name. MJ Rodriguez, India Moore, Janet
This
Mott.
is like a whole resource list. I love it.
No, I have a list for the anthology of like almost 150 trans women of color who are mostly like artists or writers or activists. Featuring Tom, Rika Aoki.
So just as Lexi puts these names out, thankfully I know most of them, so I can just give you a sense of who they are.
Yeah.
Davia Spade just released an album, I think last year, called Dawning. It was her debut album. It's on streaming platforms, but buy it on Bandcamp, support artists. It's a very orchestral, I don't know how to describe that, sort of like very
Aerial?
aerial, yeah, it's like an immersive sound. It's
instrumental, yeah.
Yeah, it makes you feel like you're in like some kind of sci-fi movie, and it's great. If you listen to it, you'll understand. Stara Marasu is a musician. She does, would you call her like pop music or like?
Yeah, she does kind of like an electro pop thing.
Yeah.
Music, sound, like auditory stuff.
Yes. And then Brianna Sinclair is an opera singer. She's like performed for like stadiums and yeah, she's like classically trained, if I'm not mistaken, and she's great. She has amazing vocals. MJ Rodriguez, I think you should know her. She's Blanca on Pose, but she's also theatrical. She has a theater background, so she's done in the Pasadena Playhouse. She did a whole show on, what was it? Little Shop of Horrors.
Little Shop of Horrors.
Little Shop of Horrors, where she was the main like actress there. The lead actress? I guess she was. Yeah, she's
but she
lead.
was.
Yeah.
She played that one.
She played the main love interest.
Yeah.
And they had Amber Riley and some other amazing cast in that too. India Moore, also from Pose. She does a lot of modeling and such. Yeah. Janet Mock, a writer. Kai Cheng Tom, also an incredible writer, inspired me to write short stories and stuff. Rika Aoki, also a writer. Another person I want to put on here is Keon Williams. I think that's how.
Oh, yeah. I love Keon.
Let me just geek out about Keon Williams real quick. Okay, so they have done this miraculous art where they've gone to like their homelands and collected like dirt and soil, bricks from like important landmarks to them and their family, and then they bring it to New York and they use it in installations. So they have a lot of really interesting sculpture work where a lot of it's basically like talking about the connections of Blackness to the earth, and there's a lot of Black culture involved in like the structural like sort of making of the pieces. And recently they did this really cool thing where they grew mushrooms into a fist, like an actual like fungal sculpture into like the shape of a fist. So they're like doing some earth witch magic over there, conjuring some fungal warriors from below. It is incredible. I would definitely check out their work. It's amazing.
I didn't know you could do that.
I didn't either. Yeah.
That's next level.
Yes.
Let's
see. Okay, so we have another Q&A question. What are you currently reading?
Do you want to go first? Are you reading anything?
I want to say yes. I started rereading Octavia Butler's. I'm just gonna pull up a random book of hers, but pretend this says Blood Child and other short stories. I've been rereading that. And it's great. It's wonderful.
Yeah, I recently started this comic book graphic novel series called Space Bandits, and it essentially follows two women criminals who were set up by their former partners, and it's really just a tale of them getting revenge, which is really fun. It's very like Thelma and Louise, like, yeah, but in space.
We can always use more of that.
Yeah.
Last thing, sorry, let me just piggyback off that real quick.
No, you're fine.
If you are looking for new trans authors of color to read, I compiled a list of like 27 authors and their respective books. Check out my Instagram. It's on there. Please support their work. They deserve it. They have some really incredible talent out there. But yes, that's on there. You'll see it under a post with a trans flag and authors. Okay, cool. The next question is, what are you currently watching?
Well, so I just finished the Fate a Winx saga. I think that's what it is.
Yes.
I was like, a Winx saga? That's not it.
Not quite.
Yes, Fate a Winx saga. And I thought that was really cute. It's very like Harry Potter-esque, but the main characters are white and heterosexual, so it's fine. But I've also been watching some pilots. So I watched the Young Rock pilot, which is Dwayne Johnson's sitcom about his life.
Wait, what? Is that a real thing?
Yeah, he just started it. The pilot just dropped on Hulu. It's really interesting.
Okay. Well, now I know what's on my list to watch.
Yeah. And what else? Yeah, I don't remember.
We've been watching, my partner and I have been watching The Good Place. Yeah, and we finished Crazy Ex-Girlfriend.
So good.
And we watched the new Monster Hunter movie, which was terrible. We watch a lot of things in this household, so I'm pretty sure that's like the last 2 days we've been watching stuff.
Nice. What are y'all watching? You can let us know in the chat.
Yes. All right, so here's our last question.
Oh, La Veneno. That was really good.
Ooh, that is
Euphoria,
good.
also really good.
An anonymous attendee says, thank you for sharing your dream projects. Looking back at your career so far, what is one of your favorite projects you've completed or worked on?
Ooh. Ooh.
That's tough. I've done so many.
I know, there's a lot. It would be very easy to say all of them, but
yeah.
You choose one and I'll choose one.
Yeah, it's in our past, something we finished. Oh my god. I feel like it should not be this hard to pick one. But
Do you want me to go first? Because I have mine.
Yeah,
okay, so I'm gonna choose 2014 Brouhaha, which was the first all trans women of color stand-up or comedy show. I forget how we finagled the title. Yeah, but yeah, there was a lot of shit that came very close to stopping that show. And we made it happen. And I I remember we had this moment backstage with Debbie, who's one of our incredible friends and colleagues of number of years,
Yes.
who runs Peacock Rebellion, which is a amazing arts organization based in East Oakland, where we said fuck the audience, and it was really just about like giving
Mhm.
our cast the space of the stage. And it, yeah, I think that night was really magical. And we had, yeah, a really great group of, I think it was 8 trans women of color who, some of them were a bit more experienced and some of them were pretty new to performing, but I think they all did really well. And
Mhm.
it was a really fun show. And I think, yeah, I think that was one of our first moments putting something together. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it was, yeah, we had done smaller stuff leading up to that, but I think that was like the first big thing that we produced and put together
Mhm.
collaboratively,
Yeah.
along with Debbie, who's I can't even put into words how much Debbie helped like make all of that happen. But yeah.
Yeah. That was special. That, I think that is like maybe of the like dozens of shows I've ever like produced or been in. Yeah, the one of the only times that we were just like collectively, consciously said, forget the audience. This is for us. Do what feels good for you, for to each other, and like go on stage and share it. And yeah, it just brought out this like energy. It sucks because we don't have footage of that night either. That is
True.
the
Yeah.
it was so special. I think in that same vein of doing something without an audience, in 2019, I had this writing project with one of my close friends who every month we had a prompt to write something. So it could be something like incorporate the color red into the theme of your piece or rewrite a fairy tale. And we did 6 stories out of the 12 that we aimed for, but it was so much fun just writing, not thinking about selling it or not thinking about publishing it, like just writing creatively and sharing it with your friend, right, and getting some feedback on it, but like it just being silly and ridiculous. And yeah, that really helped me grow as a writer and start thinking outside of like memoir type writing or self-writing. Yeah, it was so much fun. Oh my god. Yes. But yeah, I think that's all I have. That's let's see. Okay. Should we just do this last question and that's it, and then wrap it up?
It's
Okay.
more for you than it is
Yeah.
for me. So
So yeah, Kelly, I will DM you this answer. But yes. Yes. Yeah.
cool. So Corey, is it okay if we end a little early?
Absolutely. I mean,
Okay.
100%. No, let's keep you here and force you to keep going. That would be terrible. I hate to do that. Thank you both so much. I just, I'll just say like a little off script that just I appreciate and love you both so much. And it's been a pleasure knowing you both for like, I want to say almost 10 years now.
Yep.
We go back
Tumblr days.
in the
Yeah.
Tumblr days. I'll out myself. We were in the that age of time where we kind of grew up in a certain space in a certain way and made connections across time and space through little old Tumblr in its old version of itself. So it's been a real joy to bring you now into this piece of work that I'm doing on this end. And I just think there's so much that you all offer to us in so many ways, and just to each other. And just thank you for letting us witness your love for each other tonight. That was really beautiful. It was super beautiful. And I know that it would have been so important to me as a student to just be able to like hear that. So I just really want to thank you all for creating these moments of I think history. It's history making when we actually get to talk so directly about these pieces of
Mhm.
you know what got us here. So thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you,
Thanks so much for.
Corey.
Oh yeah. Go.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you, Corey, and thank you to the team. Thank you to the ASL interpreters. Just thank you to everyone who brought this this event together.
Yeah, and I'll name directly. I just really want to thank Candace and Kaylin, who's been our amazing interpreters tonight. And if you need interpreters, feel free to reach out because I always want to make sure we're giving people work
Mhm.
and directing people to their work. And also our captioner, Julene from LNS, Leif and Ani, who supported us with tech tonight, our event co-sponsor, Portland Community College Women's Resource Center, and Yujni from the Trans Women Community Project, who spoke earlier, our staff team here at the WRC, and last but not least, all of our attendees who made this event what it was. And this is our fourth one, and it still feels like such a sweet container, even virtually, to just be together, even though we can't see everyone. And
Mhm.
thank you for that. Yes, please follow us, on all of our social media. Please follow Lexi and Luna. All events that I do, I always just say, like, make it meaningful, do something with this information, follow someone, talk to someone about it, share, go tell someone you love them, whatever you feel from this. And we've got our Sexual Assault Awareness and Action Month coming up in April, and we've got some big stuff planned. So a good plug to follow us and sign up for our newsletter. So thank you. Thanks, everyone. And we'll have our little slideshow going, but
Mhm.
we'll wrap here. So have a great
Awesome.
Good night, everyone. Take care.
Good night. Thank you.